Okay, so today a little bit, today and a little tomorrow is basically a discussion of the laws of Edom, witnesses. Most specifically, 72b. Most specifically, the laws of some of the laws of what we call Edi Zaymim and Edi Hakosha. We'll explain those terms in a moment. Let's begin. Ganav al Pishnayim. You stole. There are two witnesses that testified to witnessing the robbery. The Tovach Umachar al PM, and he slaughtered or sold it, obviously a sheep or an ox, based the same witnesses provided the testimony that he slaughtered or sold it. It turns out they're Edom Zaymim. Okay, Edom Zaymim for short are Edom that are lying. We'll talk in a moment the difference between Edom Zaymim and Edom Hakosha. There's a difference between Zaymim who are liars and Hakosha which are contradicted. So for Edom Zaymim, the penalty for Edom Zaymim is that they get what they wanted to do. So what they wanted to do, they wanted to make him pay for the robbery and 4 and 5. So what happens? Mishal not called, they pay everything. Ganav al Pishnayim. Two witnesses testified that they saw him stealing it. And then another two witnesses came and said, Tovach Umachar, he slaughtered or sold it. Al Pishnayim Acherim, two other witnesses. Elu ve'elu nimtzu Zaymim. It turns out all four of them were lying. The first two witnesses pay payments number 1, that's the principal, plus payment number 2, that would be kefil, because the first witnesses wanted to make him pay kefil as a regular ganav. The second set of witnesses, Mishalman Tashlum Gimel, they pay 3 payments if it was an ox, right? So they pay 3, 4, and 5. Let's say just the last set of witnesses are false. So who misham tashlumei kefil, v'hem misham tashlumei gimel. The thief pays double because he's a standard ganav, standard nighttime thief. He pays principal plus kefil. V'hem misham tashlumei gimel. They pay an additional 3 payments to the robber because they wanted the robber to pay 5. It turns out they were lying. They were going to pay. The robber would pay 3 more than he would have otherwise had to pay. So therefore, they had to pay the robber those three animals. Okay. One second. Let's say they one of the last set of witnesses was Huzam. He was determined to be a liar. So then what happens? Batla Edeshniya. The second witness comes apart. Okay, why is that? Because in order to have testimony, you need to have 2 witnesses. In order to have Edi Hazama, you have to have both witnesses determined to be liars. If you have only one witness as a liar, so then what happens? The testimony gets disbanded, it falls apart. And it falls apart, and therefore nothing can be used. Nobody gets a penalty, and testimony cannot be used. Moreover, let's say that of the 2 witnesses that testify they saw the item being stolen, one of them is a liar. So then what happens? Batla kola edus. The entire testimony falls apart. Why? Shem ein geneva, ein tficha ve'ein mechira. If you didn't steal the animal, you couldn't have sold or slaughtered it. So therefore, if you determine that a single witness that testified that the robbery occurred is a liar, then the second set of witnesses in the first testimony, it all falls apart and nothing happens. Okay, so let's explain a few things here. First of all, let's go to Hazama. What is Hazama? Hazama is a pretty novel idea where you argue that the witnesses are liars by the fact that they could not have seen what they claim occurred. They were in a different location at the time it happened. I guess you could say, in a certain sense, there's a fundamental problem. How, if the Torah says that 2 witnesses is the best available testimony, then how can you undermine 2 witnesses with another 2 witnesses? So that's 2 against 2. Why would we believe the second ones over the first ones? So a creative solution to this problem is to undermine their testimony from that which they cannot testify about. Let's explain. What can't you testify about? Yourself. That would include the location where you are at the time that you're testifying. So by undermining that argument, by undermining the fact you're saying that you could not have, you claim to make a case, you claim to be able to testify, but that claim you're not believed on. You're only believed in the fact that you're testifying. The implicit component that you were there and present is fine, but once it's challenged by somebody else, we will believe the second group over the first group. That is called Edi Hazama. Again, Hazama or Zaimim or Zaimim or Huzam. The word Zam here is that they were turned into liars. This is how you do it. There's another thing though, which is Edi Hakosha. Hakosha is contradictory. So, for example, let's say Reuven and Shimon testify that they saw. By the way, brothers can't testify together as one set of witnesses. So here we'll presume that all 12 Shvatim were not related. Okay, so Reuven and Shimon, unrelated, testify that let's say Binyamin stole from Yosef, right? And then Levi and Yehudah saying, well, can't be. You know why? Because Binyamin wasn't there. Binyamin was in Mexico at the time. Couldn't have gotten there. It's not possible. So what happens here? This is a dakosher. We're contradicting each other. Reuven and Shimon say one thing. Levi and Yehudah say another thing. They have a debate here whether or not Binyamin was present in Portland or whether he was in Mexico. In that case, it's a dakosher. We reject the testimony outright. Now, obviously, you might be thinking to yourself, well, maybe one of them is probably lying, right? So maybe we should look for Edi Hazaman. That's fine. It might be a very good reason to suspect that one of them is lying and to make Edi Hazaman. Try to figure out who's lying and then try to search for witnesses that could testify that they're lying. That's all true. And again, we'll discuss this in a moment. If you can actually first you do Hakosha, then you can do Hazama afterwards or not. We'll discuss that. Okay, that's the difference between Edi Zaimim and Edi Hakosha. We together? Okay, now we get into a very fundamental debate. This debate is relevant to many different corners of Talmud. Itmar we learned. Eid Zaimim. Abai Amr Lafrehu Nifsal, Rava Amr Mikanu Labahu Nifsal. Okay, fundamental question here. So you have Reuven and Shimon, right, testify that Binyamin stole from Yosef on Sunday. Okay, and then they've been living their happy married lives, and Binyamin has been forced to pay restitution to Yosef for a couple of months. He's been making his restitution, and they've been, I don't know, signing on to ksubas, being witnesses at weddings, signing divorces, all sorts of stuff. And then 3 months later, another two witnesses come and say, Hazama. Reuven and Shimon are lying. Levi and Yehudah come in and say Reuven and Shimon could not have testified that Binyamin stole from Yosef in Portland on August 1st because on August 1st they were in Los Angeles. So now we have a problem here, right? What do we do with their testimony? Do we consider them liars retroactively or only henceforth? Now, in a certain sense, what Abai is arguing is the simple argument, logically, that you have people that have been certified liars from August 1st. So presumably, if they lied on August 1st, presumably they have no shame in lying from anything from August 1st until today. And therefore, we can invalidate anything that they've signed during that period. Okay, that's Abai's position.
Can be ending.
Yeah, it could. You can make a lot of messes here. Absolutely. Rava says, henceforth they become invalid. Okay, so let's explain it. The moment the guy lied, he's wicked. Why? Because what's supposed to give me a second? It's missing. I can't remember it.
Exodus 2013.
No, it's a different verse. I can't remember where it is. But basically, there's a verse that specifically designates false witnesses as rishaim, which literally translates as wicked. Now, the Torah says, "Al tashis rasha aid." You cannot appoint a rasha into a witness. So very simple, right? Abai's argument is fairly straightforward. If you're a liar, you're wicked. If you're wicked, you can't be a witness. When were you a liar? On August 1st. So if the witnesses lied on August 1st, they can no longer testify retroactively from August 1st. Rava says, it's only henceforth. the laws of Eid Zaimim are a new idea. In a certain sense, there is a novelty to the concept. And the reason the Hatrei are training it. Why are you believing one over the other? So I explained to you a small reason, which is because you're undermining their testimony from within, from something where they're not really able to testify on, which is their own, location. But it still remains an interesting new idea. Therefore, we say from the time that you've been declared Eid Zaimim, that's when you have the status of a Rasha. But retroactively, even though we consider you to be lying, we don't invalidate it. Some say Rava actually fundamentally agrees with Abaya that if you lied retroactively, if you lied on August 1st, then you're retroactively invalid from August 1st. Okay, so why does Rava then say if so? We only invalidate you henceforth. The reason is because you're causing unnecessary losses. For example, let's say the guy, you can imagine that Reuben borrows from, give me a second here. Let me try to,
Somebody got divorced.
yeah, so that wouldn't be the kuchas. Okay, the kuchas simply is let's say you move to a third party here. So basically, they testified, let's say Binyamin stole from Yosef, and then in the interim on December 1st, they testified that somebody sold the field. But now that document is invalidated, then it's unfair to the buyer of the field, who is now in line, let's say, for somebody to collect from his field without just cause, because you've invalidated his document. So therefore, it's a rabbinical enactment that we only consider you invalidated henceforth. Okay, my benaya, what's the difference between the two versions of Rava? That's hidu be trei lechad or trei lechad. Okay, one possibility is where you were mazim each group individually, each individual on his own. So in other words, you had two witnesses testifying that one of them was in LA, and another two witnesses came and testified that the other one was also in LA. So now there's no contradiction. It's 2 against 1. And we do believe 2 over 1. In that case, there's no chiddush. And in that case, Rava would agree that the invalidation would occur retroactively. But if the reason of Rava is because of the buyers of property in between, then we still would say that Mikan Alabahu Nifsal. Okay. According to the opinion that says because the chiddush is no chiddush here, and therefore you'd be invalidated retroactively. According to the version that says the reason is because of the loss for the buyers, so then there would be a problem. Amr of Yomi Midifti. Rav Yomi Midifti said, "Over the Papa over the Kavasei de Rava." Amr of Yomi Midifti. Over the Papa over the Kavasei de Rava. Rav Yomi said over a story that Rav Papa followed the opinion of Rava. Rav Ashi Amar. Rav Ashi says, "Hilchas Kavasei de Abaya." The halacha follows Abaya. The Hilchas Kavasei de Abaya biyal kigam. In these 6 debates, Ya'al Kigam, the halacha follows Abaya. The first one, Yud, is Yir Shalemi Das. We'll get to that. The second one, Ayin, is Eid Zaimim, L'mafrehu Nifsal, which is our Gemara. The other 4, I believe, are machlokes between Rashi and Taisus. So it's not actually simple which is 6 times, but which 6, 2 of them we know. I believe the other 4 are not referenced. Okay. Might be one more that's actually specifically mentioned in the Gemara. I'm not sure. Okay, Tanan. No, it looks like there's 2 more probably. Kuf would be Kedushin She'em Esur in the Bia. That is the one in Kedushin, and Sanhedrin Chav Zayin. I'm not sure which one that one is. I'm not sure. It looks like there's 2 that are machlokes. It's 4 of them. It seems like are specific in the Gemara. Sanhedrin, I have one. No, Sanhedrin is the same one. Sanhedrin, it's 3 of them. So it's Yir Shalem Das, Eid Zaimim, and Kedushin She'em Esur in the Bia. We saw Kedushin soon will be in Kedushin, Yish Shlomi Das will get from Bamitzia, and then Eid Zayim Mafrei Nifsal is here and in Sanhedrin. So there's 4 of them. The other 3, I'm sorry, those are 3 of them. The other 3 are Machlekes Rashi and Taisus. Okay. Tanan. Getting back to the Mishnah. Gonav al Pishnayim Mitovach Machar al PM. You stole with 2 witnesses, and then you slaughtered based on the same witnesses. It turns out they're liars. They pay everything. My love, they testified about the robbery. Then they testified that the animal was stolen. So for example, Yosef stole from Binyamin the animal on Sunday, and then he slaughtered it on Thursday. And presumably, Reuven and Shimon walked into court on Monday to say that Yosef stole from Binyamin on Sunday. And they walked into court on Thursday to testify that Yosef slaughtered the animal, the stolen animal. Make sense? He stole on Sunday, they testified about it on Monday. He slaughtered it on Wednesday, they testified about it on Thursday. Okay. And then what happened? 2 witnesses came and said, by the way, Sunday never happened. You weren't there. And Thursday also never happened. You also couldn't have been there. The whole thing's made up. First, they were huzam. They were determined liars on the robbery on Sunday's event, and then certified liars on the slaughtering, which was Wednesday's event. If you'll say it, that they become invalid retroactively. One second. If they were invalidated on Sunday, then it turns out that they were never able to testify on Thursday.
It was Monday.
I'm sorry, Monday. They lied about it on Monday. They lied on Monday. They lied on Thursday. Then the witnesses come in on the next week, and they're mazing them. So first they're mazing them on the Geneva. You couldn't have been there on Sunday. Well, if I couldn't have been there on Sunday, then my testimony on Thursday is not valid. If the guy was a certified liar on Sunday, his Thursday testimony was invalid. Therefore, why does he pay 4 and 5? Right? He should only pay 1 and 2. Kefil. Because by determining he's a liar, you're undermining his second statement as well. His testimony that the guy should have to pay 3 and 4 and 5. So why do they have to pay for why do they have to pay for lying about slaughtering the animals when it retroactively turns that they were liars at that moment? The Gemara concludes, it turns out they lied about they were huzam on the slaughter first. One second. One second. Then they were huzam on the slaughtering first. One second. Okay, so first they were determined to lie about the slaughterings. They have to pay. They have to pay for the 3, 4, and 5 times that 3, 4, and 5 extra payments they would have made him pay.
The people that lie.
The liars have to pay for 3, 4, and 5. Then you determine they lied about the robbery. Then you have to pay 1 and 2. So Amri, hold on a second. Well, who cares? What's the difference? In other words, so what happened was same story, right? So they said Sunday he stole. They testified on Monday that he stole on Sunday. They testified on Thursday he stole he slaughtered it on Wednesday, and then on Tuesday they said, turns out you were lying about what happened on Thursday. Or what you said, what your testimony on Thursday was a lie, and then on Thursday they say your testimony on Monday was a lie. But who cares? If Eid Zayim is Lamafrehu Nifsal, you retroactively make him invalid. So as long as at any point in time they're turned into liars for their testimony about the robbery, it turns out that we cannot accept their testimony on Thursday when they testify the guy wanted to slaughter. The guy slaughtered the animal. So therefore, retroactively we nullify anything they said after they testified about robbery, and therefore they should never have to pay 3. They should only have to pay principal plus kefil, double payments. They should never have to pay 3, 4, and 5. Because it turns out that their testimony has to be retroactively rejected. If at any point in time we say that they were lying on Sunday on Monday, then we must by perforce reject whatever they said on Thursday. Because they were lying at the time. They were liars. They were people who cannot be trusted. And therefore we can't accept it. And if we can't accept it, then we must, if we reject their testimony if we reject Thursday's testimony, it's not reliable, then they didn't plan on killing him. Their testimony wasn't valid in the first place. They didn't plan on making him pay 3, 4, and 5 because the testimony wasn't valid. Together?
Yeah.
Mostly.
Just think how a lot of this would play out in the regular court. I mean, there are a lot of similarities.
Okay.
In determining guilt, responsibility, nullification of witnesses' testimony, a lot of it's similar.
Yeah, fair enough.
Pay 3, 4, and 5. What's 3?
Okay, it's in other words, we have to sort of cut up the payment. In other words, because testifying somebody's a thief results in him paying twice. Right? He's principal Karen plus kafel.
Oh, okay.
But then when you testify that he slaughtered the ox, then you want to make him pay an additional 3 payments, 3, 4, and 5. He would have already had to pay 1 and 2. So 1 and 2 you're not making him liable for, right? You're adding on an additional 3 animals. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, the solution is okay, very simple. What happened was they said he stole it on Sunday, he slaughtered it on Sunday, and they testified on Monday of both items. And they were mazing them on Sunday. On Monday, they said you couldn't have been there on Sunday, you couldn't have seen anything. So because it all happened at once, you wanted to make him pay 5 animals. You're in a single testimony. You are now huzam, you're certified liars. You must pay whatever you intended on doing. You plan on making him pay 5 oxen, you pay 5 oxen. Okay, v'huzmu. Let's say this is a debate between Tanoim. 2 people testify that he stole, and the same people testify that he slaughtered it. So they testified that he stole and that he slaughtered, one testimony. Then they nullified the testimony of stealing. We say so we say that the testimony has to be roundly rejected. Huzmu al tficha. Now let's say they were huzam not only on the gneva but also on the slaughter, on the tficha. But halfway down, I come over aleph. First one is tashlumei. Huzma al tficha. Hu mishal tashlumei kefal v'hem mishal tashlumei shloisha. If they were only huzam on the slaughter, so they pay 3, the robber pays 2. 1 second. Okay, let's explain. So if they were huzam only on the robbery, they pay 1 and 2. If they're huzam only on the slaughter, they pay 3, 4, and 5, which is 3. They pay 3 times. Okay. Amar Rav Yossi says, when is this true? B'shtei idiots, with 2 separate witnesses. We'll have to explain what this means. Shtei idiots means 2 testimonies. What does 2 testimonies mean? Did it happen one after another? Were there 2 separate witnesses? We'll get to it. We'll have to explain. 2 testimonies, then this is all true. But with 1 testimony, edus shavatla mitzasa batla kula. One second. Okay, let's explain. My b'shtei idiots. What does 2 testimonies mean? My be'edus achas. What does 1 testimony mean? Even b'shtei idiots mamish. 2 testimonies means 2 pairs of witnesses. B'shtei kidei edim. Achas b'katzeh. Yeah, 1 second. Hold on. I'm sorry. Be'edus achas. What does 1 testimony mean? B'kat achas b'zachar. 1 set of witnesses that's testified in 2 events. The Amar Rabbi Yossi says, "Be'edus achas b'kat achas b'zachar zeh ki mishadi agneva v'had mishadi atficha ki mishaz mi atficha edus shabbat mitzas v'had akula ve'etzim lahu agneva." Okay, as follows. So in other words, let's say we say that 2 testimonies means 2 actual groups of witnesses. 1 testimony means 1 set of witnesses, even if the witnesses testified in 2 different events at 2 different times. The problem is Rabbi Yossi says 1 witness then they're huzam on the entire witness, the entire testimony. It doesn't make any sense because if they testified first that he stole, and then at a later point in time they testified he slaughtered it, and they determined that they were lying at the time they slaughtered it, what makes you say that they were lying at the time they said that he stole it? Why would I think that? Elalav must be b'shtei idiots. What does two testimonies mean? Be'edus achas ke'en shtei idiots u'mayniu b'kar achas b'zeh chazeh. Two testimonies means one set of witnesses in two events. Al be'edus achas b'vas achas loy. But in a single, but if there was one witness that testified at the same time he slaughtered and stole it. 1 second. Okay, so as follows. So now, if one set of witnesses testified at the same time, stolen and then slaughtered, and you nullify the slaughtered component. Well, at that point, what you must say is you can't believe them about the stealing either. So you make them pay 3, 4, and 5, presumably, because that's what they intended on doing, but you don't believe them on the robbery either, because it was the same testimony, stolen and slaughtered. However, if it was two separate testimonies, then no. Second test, if they were huzam just on tficha, just on slaughter, so okay, so you say that they're not believed about the slaughter, but they are believed about the robbery, because that they testified about earlier. And then you would, the robber would pay kefil, and they would pay to the robber 3, 4, and 5. Okay, everyone agrees that if they testify within a Tractate Dibur, okay, just for brief reference, what is a Tractate Dibur? Tractate Dibur is about 3, 4, or 5 seconds. We'll soon see there's actually a machlokes whether it's 2 seconds or 4 seconds, roughly speaking. What's the idea? The idea here is that there is a certain level of impreciseness that we allow. In other words, it's impossible to do two things at once. Right? But at some point we say that if they're close enough, we consider them to have happened at the same time. So you might think of it, let's say, you have a race, right? And the race is measured in instants, and two cars win at the same instant. It's a tie. Even if we can determine that if you fraction out the instants to milliseconds, you actually have a winner. But that's not the point. In order to win the race, you need to win it by an instant, not a millisecond. Okay, so something like that would be the idea of Tractate Dibur. Yeah, Tractate Dibur is it has to occur at the same. Tractate Dibur is considered occurring at the same time, and you have a 4-second window. So in other words, everyone agrees that if you make two testimonies, for example, you say it was stolen and slaughtered. Obviously, you can't say stolen and slaughtered at the same time; it's just not possible, right? So what do? You say them within a Tractate Dibur. You say them within a 4-second frame. We consider it as if it was said at the same time. So everyone agrees to that concept. So what's the debate between Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis? The Rabbanan Savra Mikano Labahu Nefsal. The Kivin the Meiki Shai to commit to me at Ficha, to commit mitzmi, itzim Agnev the loy mitzmi loy itzim. So the rabbis say that Mikano Labahu Nefsal, meaning they testified on Monday, let's say, that it was stolen and slaughtered. And then they were huzam on Wednesday. So if you say Mikan al-Abahu Nifsal, so their testimony on Monday remains valid, except that we treat parts of it as invalid from henceforth. Which means that we say that they testified stolen and slaughtered. They said the slaughtered part they were lying about. Yeah, they were lying from Wednesday onwards. But we're not going to invalidate what they said on Monday about the theft. Because that's going to be like Rava's opinion, Mikan al-Abahu Nifsal. They only become invalid henceforth. But on the robbery that they were not husam, we're not gonna say that they were liars. Rabbi Yossi says, it happens retroactively. The key when the miyad ki ashidu who the mifsli ki etzim lo atficha etzim lo nami agneva the Tractate Dibur kedibur dami. According to Rabbi Yossi, because they were liars on Wednesday, they're liars when they said it on Monday. Because on Monday they said stolen and slaughtered at the same second, 4 seconds apart, which is the same thing, same time. So therefore, they become retroactively invalid also for the lie, also for the theft. Together. So Gemara says, "Amr, The Gemara proposes that everyone could agree that I'm afraid that you become invalid retroactively. Elahacha b'tekadei dibur kedibur dami kamiflagi. Kamiflagi. Rabbanan sav tekadei dibur la kedibur dami. Rabbi Yossi sav tekadei dibur kedibur dami. Okay, in other words, a simple resolution here is the debate actually is not necessarily on the same debate as Abaye and Rava. If witnesses become invalid retroactively or henceforth, the debate here is about the concept of Tractate Dibur. Now, obviously, the concept of Tractate Dibur exists. Tractate Dibur is this 4-second interval, but it's not necessarily 4 seconds. Well, there's an extended version, there's a shortened version. There's 2 Tractate Diburs, and this is very important. We'll get to it in a moment. Let's say, for argument's sake, there's about a 5-second interval and there's about a 2-second interval. And we'll soon see, actually, that some people hold of one, not the other. But everyone agrees the concept of Tractate Dibur is a relevant concept, that we consider things that happen within a 2 or 4-second interval apart have happened at the same time. The question is that, I guess you'd say there's 2 things, the question is whether that applies to testimony. And the Gemara proposes here that maybe that actually is the debate between the rabbis and Rabbi Yossi, whether the concept of Tractate Dibur applies to testimony. In other words, according to the rabbis, Tractate Dibur does not apply to testimony. So there's 2 separate testimonies. It's true that retroactively you're invalid in the slaughter, but you're not retroactively invalid on stealing, even though they were said 2 seconds apart. However, according to Rabbi Yossi, no, we combine them together. One testimony, you're invalid on part of it, the whole thing is disposed of, and we cannot use the portion of theft as well.
We split the hairs here.
Yes, we'll be splitting even more hairs now. So let's do it.
Microseconds.
Let's split some hairs more, and then we'll stop. Okay, Savar Rabbi Yossi Tractate Dibur kedibur dami. Does Rabbi Yossi hold of the concept of Tractate Dibur? But tonight we learned hareza tmuras oila tmura shlomim. Without going too deeply, tmura is an attempt to take the sanctity of a sacrifice and put it onto a different animal. Okay, it doesn't work, but both animals are sanctified. You have to treat them both with sacrificial sanctity. So what do you do? The guy said this animal, it's the tamur of that shlomim and that oila. Which is it? Hareza tmuras oila. We take the first thing he said. He said oila, we take oila. He said it should be both. He said oila and shlomim. It can only be one. So we take the first thing he said. He said oila first, we say oila. Rabbi Yossi says in the kachnas chav mitchila, if he intended on doing both. So what we do is we take what he because you can't say oila and shlom at the same time. He had to say it one after another. So therefore, we say he meant both of them. He meant oila and shlomim, and we do is we sell this animal is considered the tumor of an oila and a shlomim. We wait till it gets a blemish. We sell the animal and we split the money. Half it goes to oila, half it goes to shlomim.
Oh.
Okay. Let's say he says oila, and then he changes his mind and he says tumur shlom. He says shlom. Hareza tumuras oila, and then it becomes an oila. We ask the question. Nimlach. He changed his mind. Shita. That's obvious. Obviously, if you change your mind, it goes by the first thing you said. Because if once you made it into a tumur of an oila, it's already done. You can't do something else to it. You can't. In other words, if you have a sacrifice, you can't say, "Oh, let's say it's a shlom." You can't say, "Oh, well, this should be an oila." It's already a sacrifice. It's not even yours. It's when you take an animal, it's not a sacrifice. You can make tumur on it. So tumur is I have a whole flock of sheep. These are sacrifices. These are non-sacrifices. I pull one of the non-sacrifices, say this animal that's mine, that I can do whatever I want. It's not a sacrifice. It should be in place of that oila or that shlom. But if I say an oila first, then it's an oila. It's already a sacrifice. It's too late now. Now you can move it to the other side of the pen. It's a sacrifice animal. And now you want to say it should be the tumur of shlom. It doesn't work.
You said really quickly right after the first.
There we go. Okay. V'avinaba nimlach. He changed his mind. Shita. It's obvious. V'amar papa nimlach v'techdei dibur kamrinan. It must be changed his mind within a techdei dibur, within the 4-second interval. Okay. And what does Rabbi Yossi say? Everyone agrees in this Tractate Dibur. Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. Rabbi Yossi agrees that if you change his mind within a 4-second interval, that it remains an oila. You can't change your mind. In other words, Tractate Dibur is not the same thing. It's already an oila. Now it's too late. So you see, Rabbi Yossi actually does not hold to the concept of Tractate Dibur. We together?
In general, or just from?
We'll have to explain that, but apparently in general. Hill together.
Okay.
So the Gemara says, okay, so now we finally split the last tier here. Amri as follows. The resolution is as follows. Tractate Amri Trey Tractate Dibur Hava. There are two types of Tractate Dibur. This is what I alluded to before. One is a student greeting his master, and the other one is a master greeting a student. Okay, Rabbi Yosi rejects the Tractate Dibur, which is the student asking his master. How does a student greet his master? He says, Shalom Alecha, peace upon you, Rebbe Umari, my master who I fear. The nafish, because it's very long, it's like 4 or 5 seconds. However, Kadesh She'elas Harav Talmud, the master to the student, Shalom Alecha, peace upon you. There's no further greetings, there's only 2 seconds. It's like that he agrees with. So in other words, in the case of Genev and Tficha, he has only a 2-second interval. If you do it in 4 seconds, actually Rabbi Yosi would agree, and he would say it's 2 separate testimonies. If you're invalidated on the second half, you would not be invalidated for the first half.
Like you're a slow speaker, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's a good question. Well, maybe you say peace upon you too, also, right?
Yeah. All right.